psychotherapist here in New York City, and today we're going to talk about anger and the Enneagram. We're going to look at all 9 numbers and how they interact with anger. My hope for you is that you go on the full journey, not just look at your number, but think about how your number is a crucial part of how you interact with anger. But the other 8 numbers have a lot to teach you because we have all 9 numbers within us. And what I'm going to try to do is pick out some areas of strengths and weaknesses for all 9 numbers. But in my own life, I've used all of these 9 ways of dealing with anger to help me with my journey with anger, which is fraught with all kinds of compromising situations I've put myself in with anger, on the receiving end, on the giving end. I've at times been quiet to my anger, and I've times been loud with my anger. The first reason I got into therapy at 23 years old as a client was because of deep insecurities, but also because those insecurities led to me lashing out with anger. And I remember that first session just having to commit to being honest with myself that my anger was getting me in trouble. Now, for some of you, your anger is so far removed, subdued, you've domesticated it. It doesn't have much movement in your life towards necessary ends. So you might get trampled on, you might get walked on. You have to study the ways in which you've self-limited. Now, for those of you who have overdone, not underdone your anger, you're going to have to look at how to subdue the wild intensities. And everybody is somewhere on that spectrum. Now, how do we take out our anger? We take it out on other people. We take it out on ourselves. It might be quiet. It might be loud. But we are all violent people. I think this is a quote from John Steinbeck that says, we are all violent people. We all have the heritage, no matter what old land our fathers are from, the heritage of violence. So I'll use the word violence throughout this, and it might sound strong to you. But think about just if you take out things on yourself, you have a strong inner critic, you beat yourself up at times. There is a violence to that, an inward rejection, an abandonment of self. We do that. We abandon ourselves quite often, and that's an angry move. We also abandon others. We reject them, and there's anger in that too. And sometimes we need to do that. And anger helps us do that too. It helps us create healthy boundaries. So when you are sitting in the manure bath of your own filthy words towards yourself, anger. When you are having all kinds of inner dialogue about the shittiness of somebody else, anger. But also the things you care about, the things you're willing to take a stand on, the things you're passionate about, anger's there too. So I want you to have fun with it. Not hate this acid emotion that people call it, a bad emotion. What I would love for you to do is have a finely developed locator of your rumblings, of the furies, the passivities. Not marginalize anger, not hate it, not reject it, not spit at it, but embrace it. Now, this can be very complicated because we often don't know what to do with it. What's the right distribution of it? And so therefore, sometimes it becomes fossilized for people. They just go to sleep on it and it just lies down here, but it will come out somehow. It always does. I like to say that we have been given an equal distribution of anger, all of us, but the way we put it out into the world, and the way we utilize it is very different. Think about, even in comedy, I like the comedy of Jerry Seinfeld. I like the comedy of Larry David. I like to say, quite frankly, like that I can go from Tyson to Teresa in any moment, from Mike Tyson to Mother Teresa. And I could also go from Larry David to Tony Robbins, power of positivity to total cynic. The feist of Mike Tyson and then the tenderness of Mother Teresa. Now, hopefully all these characters have a nice blend. But even in comedy, you would be surprised how much anger is used. Jerry Seinfeld says this: Irritability is an essential ingredient to comedy. If you're not easily irritated, it's hard to be funny. Anger makes us laugh. And he says comedy always begins with irritation. We like how Jerry dislikes things. We like how our favorite comedians dislike things, how they share that with us. Anger animates us. It makes us more real when it is harnessed. And we have that skillful act of mediating between anger and sadness, strength and tenderness. There's a harmony in how we distribute it. And we bring it into balance. It's not wonky and teeter-tottering. Woo! It is a powerful force. It's tactical. It's systematic. Mine is not often like this. Someone told me once that anger is best served when it's avoiding immediate pleasure. That's been so true of me, when I can just sit for a second before I use it. And there's a steadiness in the pursuit of the gold that anger gives us. I want you at the end of this to not be afraid of it. And also know that it's not going anywhere. It just needs to be harnessed well. Not self-critical, not other-critical, unless that is appropriate. But used in a way that allows us to be more ourselves. The word conflict is actually a beautiful word. Seinfeld says this too. If you break the human struggle down to one word, it's conflict. Con is the prefix in Latin which means with, together, jointly. So when we have something break us, conflict, we can also move to confront, which is to come together. Okay? Front and that con are coming face to face. It is a beautiful thing. It means we're ready to heal and deal. And there is a capacity for timing in that, a strategy. You know, this is the gift of anger. It tells us something needs to be fixed. I, today, was confronted with some of the harder things I've had to hear in a long time. This was totally serendipitous. Serendipitous? That is not the word I wanted to use. Serendipitous is the word I wanted to use. Thank you for being patient with me. Well, I did not talk to a friend for nearly a year and a half. There was a break between us. I did some things and I wasn't sure exactly what I did, but I did Drew stuff where I stepped over boundaries and I said something I shouldn't have said, and I treated people in ways I shouldn't have treated them. And because of life circumstances and because of the hardship and the pain that came from what I did, it took this person a long time. And in the meantime, I reached out. There was just this rift, and this person wasn't ready to share. And finally, it got to this point where it needed to happen. Other parties were starting to deal with the frustration of our disconnect. And I dearly care for this person. And so this person and I just minutes ago finished up an hour-and-a-half conversation in which we went there. And the words that this person had to say to me were hard. They harmed me with their feedback, but they did not, flip. I'm not gonna fix this. They hurt me with their feedback. They did not harm me. And that is the sign of good friendship. And while it took too long, right? I was dealing with my frustration towards them, and they were dealing towards their frustration with me. And the anger was raging at times. And so too was the sadness and the loss. It finally led towards confrontation. And so I'm a little raw from it still, because all of this way in which this person shared really honest and truthful feedback, things I really need to work on, I now have to continue to grind away at myself and fix those things. This is what anger does. It sets boundaries. It confronts. It says, I did not like that. I'm going to push back. It also says, I want that. I'm going to go towards it because I think it can help me and it can help others. Anger is a fuel, and it is a beautiful fuel. So while you may be struggling with it in so many ways, and right now it just seems scary to you because you underutilize it or you overutilize it, I am here for you. I want to walk with you in this because my journey with anger has been so long, and it will continue to be. There will not be a day I don't have to wrestle with it. But I want to get us excited about wrestling with it so it can do what it needs to do. Work for us, not against us. Now, of course, we can love this anger, but we must go into the wild, into the mountains, into the desert, in a sense. When we are confronted by other people's angers, when it's appropriate, and when we confront others with anger because it's appropriate, we are actually saying, I honor you with giving you the truth. I trust you enough to handle this well, but I know that it will be a journey into the subterranean regions, what Carl Jung called the shadow side. Those things in ourselves that we're not seeing, but other people are sometimes seeing and they tell us about. That's hard stuff. And we will feel rejected. We will feel like we have been abandoned. I've felt that. And it will cause us to often react with anger. But when it's done well, it is just an opportunity for you to wrestle with your demons. I love this moment in the Bible where Jesus is given the Spirit. He was baptized by John the Baptist, and it says he is pushed out into the wild to come face to face with the wild beast or Satan. And the animals become his friends, and the angels took care of him. Now, what is the context for us? It is that we must go wrestle with our stuff. And hopefully some angels and some animals will come alongside of us to be with us in that wrestling. But we have to go there because that's how we get growth. So I'm hoping that this journey for you allows you to use this anger more wisely. But you will have to go to your depths. Not blaming, not raging out on, not scapegoating with hostility and pushing outwards. Hostility makes us feel safer. Even if you take it out on yourself, it might make you feel safer because you don't have to actually confront other people. But let's look at what that is. What is scapegoating? Now, I just doubled down on some biblical references here, so just spare me your vitriol. I know that we all have weird religious baggage, but in Jewish culture, the Day of Atonement is when a priest places the sin of the previous year on an escaping goat. And what happens is that goat is beaten with thorns and reeds and sent to the desert. That placing of our sins on this goat is this idea that we'll take the violence out on another, on an innocent subject. Now, don't we all take our frustration out on others? Even what I was doing with my friend, at many moments I was scapegoating, making that person a victim of my own rage, even if it was internal, because I felt powerless and rejected. And it would diminish with immediacy some of my disgust. That is what we naturally do. And sometimes we become our own scapegoat. But that mechanism is like so strong inside of us because it just gives us a little bit more leverage. When we can blame and accuse and push off, it makes us feel a little looser. Now, we also deal significantly with rejection. And I can't say it enough how strong the word rejection is. When I hate myself because I feel like the world does not want me, well, I can be capable of all kinds of things there. So how do you do that? How do you take anger out on yourself because you feel like you are unlovable? Think about it for a second. When I have an outburst of some sort, even the ones that are internal, that just get pretty ugly, I often ask myself, whether it's minutes, hours, days, weeks, months later, was I feeling rejected? Where was I feeling rejected? Was it by the universe, by God, by a friend, by the collective feminine energy of the world that isn't saying, yes, Drew, here is the one for you? Whether it is that my career isn't doing what it needs to be doing in my mind, and I feel a bit rejected by the avenues and opportunities that aren't being opened to me. I have to check in on that because I'm often displacing it, projecting it out, not owning the sadness and pain that I feel there. John Steinbeck says this: the greatest terror a child can have is that he is not loved. And rejection is the hell he faces. And with rejection comes anger. And with anger, some kind of crime in revenge for the rejection. And with the crime, guilt. And there is the story of mankind. He says, I think that if rejection could be amputated, the human would not be what he is. So many of you have not even shown anger to the world because you feel like the world will reject you if you do. So you don't even play with it in public. You don't let it interact with an audience. So many of us have actually thrown it out there and got rejected for it. And sometimes appropriately so because it was too hostile. And then the rejection kicks in. Anger is so complicated because it ruffles people's feathers. And it may ruffle your feathers before you even put it out there. This we need to know about ourselves. So ask yourself about rejection. Steinbeck goes on to say this in East of Eden, as he's talking about these boys, these characters that have felt rejected. And once a boy has suffered rejection, he will find rejection even where it does not exist, or worse, will draw it forth from people simply by expecting it. We are wild inside. Even you subdued types, wild inside. And our emotions are all over the place. And some of you have subdued them well, and some of you have let them fly. And we need to look at how we do that without judgmental eyes, so we do not reject ourselves, and also that we don't scapegoat and put all of our pain on others. Hostility can make us feel safe, and so can passivity. So whether you're the passive type or the hostile type, you still have likely an equal distribution of anger. It's just placed differently. So I want to journey with you. Look at that. Look at how your number plays into it. But like I've said, I hope you guys, especially those of you who are struggling with this, or maybe you have friends who struggle with either finding their anger, you see them getting rolled over, or wild with their anger, that you share this with them. I will admit I've been the bully, I've been bullied. I've been the victim, I've been the victimizer. I have no place to say that I am done with anger and the ways it works with me. But it is my goal to sharpen it, to get it better, and to have fun with it. Meaning, to let the beauty of it work in me to the betterment of the people around me and to myself. So that I can use it as fuel to change the world a little bit, shift the world a little bit more towards heaven. And also that I allow it to be patiently observed when it's a bit more wild. So I thank my friend today for calling me out and calling me in general, so that we can go to the depths where I could be hurt but not harmed. Because that is often the best use of anger. And if people can't handle that, people can't take in that feedback, or you're with somebody who just constantly gives feedback and it's shitty and you know it's shitty and you need to walk away from them, allow the anger to be used in that way. This too, which I don't describe a lot in here, is the grief part of loss anger is such a component to that. So when you are going through losses in life, not just actual deaths, but just losses in general, that you know that anger will come up and that you have to let it do what it does. But do it consciously. Know that you are angry because there was a loss. Yes, I was angry at this friend because of the loss of the friendship. I had to let it do its thing because it was meant to cycle through. So, my friends, know that it is always my goal to help you feel more seen, more known, more understood, to help you fidget with the gadgetries inside and to use this tool of the Enneagram to help us get more and more clarity, and in this case, with anger. Again, my name is Drew. If you want to work with me individually, get some coaching on the Enneagram or do some deeper work, get in touch with me on my socials. They're going to be popping up. Thank you so much for joining me. Please watch all 9. I think that it's worth it for you. So let's get right into it, ones. This part is called cop and convict. There is a large spectrum between the ones. There is the ones who take out on the world a bit of that need to improve, and they push outwards and extrovert their energy. So these are the cops. These are the folks who are looking for the problems in the world, and they see that these people out here should be like me. You're kind of requiring the world to be like you, which would be incredibly boring and quite diminishing and disappointing. But there is this opposition to the way things are done. This is the one-on-one type, the sexual type. So in the subtype sense, this is the one that actually looks at the world and says, you guys got to fix some stuff. Then there's the convict, and this is on the other extreme, the self-preservers. Now, the self-preservers take a lot of that energy out on themselves. Hostility towards self. They are the convicts. They imprison themselves, and they're always looking for the warden, and the warden is inside of them, and the warden is telling them that they're always doing something wrong. The anger that a self-preserver takes out on themselves is violent. You have to look at it this way. All that self-reproach, all of that convicting conversation you're having inside is violent towards you, from you. On that other extreme, there is a violence, especially when it's not restrained, towards the world. You guys are getting it wrong. And so part of the way that you guys work through anger is to find ways to calm and relax the voice. The voice that says, find a target, see what's out in the world, and criticize it. And the voice inside that says, I'm the target, criticize myself, take it out on myself. Whew. So you're either requiring people to be you, or you're requiring yourself to be something that you're not. So part of what is going to be important for you guys to do is know what's driving you in that moment and know how the voice is targeted. Because we all swing constantly to and fro from being the cop and the convict. If I walk outside right now, I can guarantee you within the time it takes me to get 3 blocks, not even 2.5 blocks, to my cafe, I will have criticized others and criticized myself, been the cop and the convict on the way there. The one, oh, you guys got a double whammy. You're in the anger triad. That's the 8, 9, and 1s. So we got the fear triad, that's the 5s, 6s, and 7s. And we have the shame triad, the 2, 3s, and 4s. And in these categories, there's always one that extremely represents, one that underrepresents, and one that is torn between. So in this category, you guys aren't only in the anger triad, you're also, your sin, your passion, your vice is anger, wrath. Double friggin' whammy, I am sorry. The unfortunate thing for the ones is that they're not usually even aware. It's so repressed or suppressed anger that they're not even aware that they're in relationship with it at an extreme level. So when they're beating themselves up, they don't see that as an anger motivated position. When they're criticizing the world, they're sometimes just in such a position of feeling right about that they don't see it as anger. Let's quickly just jump back to the subtypes, because a lot of people aren't as familiar with the subtypes. I tell you this over and over again, and I'm going to say it throughout this video, that it is more important than the wings unless your next highest number is one of your wings in your scoring. The self-preserver is a perfectionist. This is the person who's the convict, taking a lot out on themselves, a lot of internal pressure on self. The social type is the perfect person that is a good example. You know, they're the example for the world. So they're kind of torn between taking it out on themselves as the convict and taking it out on the world as the cop. And then the sexual type is perfecting others. Just think about in your own life how you're doing that every day. And if that is not your number, one's not your number, how you're doing it every day. And two, if you are a one, how you're specifically anchored in these areas, either projecting out or taking on in. But the reality of life rubs the one the wrong way, that things are broken, that things are flawed, that things aren't fixed well. And part of your journey is to realize that it will always be flawed. To come to this deep realization every day, a practice, a discipline, whether it's through meditation, contemplation, prayer, whatever, that I am in a place that isn't what I want it to be. And can you find some peace and calm there? If I'm going to walk to the cafe, and again, I'm such an asshole that 2.5 blocks is going to have critique internally on me and on others, even if I don't see a human on the way, can I come to a place of saying, this is an imperfect world, and it is not mine. I have no right to it. I'm just another member here. And all people are doing stupid things, and I'm doing stupid things. I have to continually practice the art of kindness to myself and to others. To let that warden go back into his office, or let the cop, and I don't mean anything against cops, I'm just using this as kind of the extreme version of policing the world. Can I let my inner policing button be chilled? For all of us, it feels counterintuitive to enjoy, appreciate, and really honor anger. It feels off. Ones, and all of us, you have to be daily aware of how much it fuels your life, the good and the bad. It is such a creative force for you ones. You do actually perfect things. You make things right. You just add and tweak and perfect little intricacies in things. And for that, we appreciate you. And I appreciate the one part of me that is constantly looking for a little leg up. So the true perfectionist in you is beautiful. And anger is part of that. Anger says no to things and says, I don't want it to be that way. But when it's working subtly and covertly and oppressively on you ones, and for all of us, whether we are annoyed or irritated or frustrated with self or others, and just trying to help them, that's our justification, right? We're trying to help you get better. And resentment's building and building and building, and you don't even know that you're angry, that's a problem. So daily you have to do a check-in. Why am I angry? How am I angry? Who am I angry at? How much of this is put on me? You have to be a bit more hyper-aware and hyper-focused on how anger is a part of your life. When I'm working with ones as clients, I constantly have to remind them that anger is a huge part. So for you sexual types, know that the expressiveness might look like the zealot, the pushing out, the improving outwards, others, and especially the close people to you, being impatient with them, direct, forceful. A lot of times you guys look like an 8. And that's the sticky, juicy stuff for you, is how do you pull back and not take it out on the world and make them a scapegoat for the things you have to work on, which is usually just understanding that the world is broken and living with that grayness. For you self-preservers, that high level of fear that comes over you of getting things wrong and beating yourself down and having that ugly suffering, that cruel punishment you put on yourself, that I am irrevocably wrong. I'm not meant to be here because I just don't do it right. That gnarly stuff is going to keep you from being more connected to others. And so the critical of self part and being least critical of others is the part that you have to work on. And know that there's so much fear there of being at fault. Now, you social types, you're in the middle, you're swinging back and forth. So I'm just using these polars as examples. I'm not trying to leave you out, but you're fluctuating a little bit more than those other two. But we all are doing this. And we're all in denial of how much anger is fueling us, how much that wrath of looking at the world and saying it's right and wrong, and this is right and that is wrong, and whew. We have to slow down and know that this tool is so special. Anger is this tool that you guys have on a level that most other people don't, so you can leverage it better than most. Move from policing, move from convicting self and being in bars and in a cage, to a place of consciousness, just a deep awareness every day of how this thing plays out in your daily life emotionally. So I spent more time on the ones here because it's anger and anger, part of that triad, and you're the highest level of anger in that triad. At least it affects you the most, even more than an 8. Because it is in a different way than an 8, often repressed and unknown to you. It feels so wrong to be angry that you're not in awareness of it. You deny it. The 8 is actually more aware that they have it and more comfortable with it, having it. So the denial is less. Therefore, they're more aware of how to use it when they're healthy. You have to become more and more aware and working to have a very deep, intimate, almost sexual, committed relationship. And I say sexual by, like, if you're with a partner, committing so much of your life to saying, let's stay together, let's stay intimate. I don't want to forget you. I have to remember you. I have to be aware of you and just have you in my face so that I don't misuse you or I don't get misused by you. I've got a lot of 1 in me too. It is not an easy road, friends. Work on being aware, ones, of just how much it can be a partner in crime with you, to keep the metaphor going. 2s, let's get into the muck and mire of anger. 1, you have to figure out if you're feeling anger. Sometimes 2s have such a hard time identifying the actual emotion, especially when it's the emotion that doesn't feel like a good emotion. So just like 9s, y'all can put your bad emotions somewhere deep down, and it creates a hostility, a resentment that bubbles up. So this one's called, of course you feel that way. Of course you feel that way. Like, 2s just have to own that it is hard to be someone who is taking care of people regularly, someone who is attuned to people's needs, someone who's picking up on subtleties and having an insight into and a sense for the need of others. Now, of course, this helps you gain some safety and some favor and some acceptance. So there is a mixed motive here. But y'all want to be liked. And also, you guys do want to take care of people, to make people feel welcome, known, seen. At its best, you guys are ushering people into a sense of self. At your worst, you're taking care of people who don't give a shit about you. So this builds up lots of resentment, lots of wounding, lots of pain, and it is a choice you've made. So when we're dealing with anger, there's a decision that has to be made whether this is an anger I need or this is an anger that's built on me being stuck in a prison that I've made with people who don't reflect back to me that same mutuality. And if that's the case, then you have to actually start working on yourself and setting boundaries, knowing how to push back. And this is hard because you're going to start feeling rejected. And I think for twos, they tend to have the highest need for love. Now, it's like a weird thing to say because every number has a need for love, but the fear of being rejected is so high for a two that to stay in that love pact, not pact, the thing that you guys do together with somebody. There's this feeling that love is in short order and I've got to make sure I get my fill. And then there's also this rub of I don't deserve it. And so this need to be appreciated, appreciate me. Know that I am serving you. So give me love back. Gets so loud. And what happens with anger if you are not comfortable with it? If you don't say to yourself, of course I feel that way, and start playing with that emotion and learning it, resentment and hostility just really take over. And then you have this war inside of what is okay to express and what isn't okay to express. And because rejection, I think for all of us, is the hardest thing to say we feel. Think about how hard it is to say, I feel rejected. Or I've been rejected. It's so painful, so vulnerable, that we will do most anything we can to resist it. That fear of rejection can burn. And like ones who take out on themselves that they aren't perfect, and so they beat themselves up a bit. Twos can take out on themselves, I haven't lived up to some kind of standard for this person. I have not become what they need me to be. And so they question, who must I be? And there's this cycle that starts with the unconscious hostility that's building inside of you because of a certain compassion fatigue. You're fatigued by taking care, by sensing people's needs. And when you're sensing people's needs and taking care of them so much, and befriending them and trying to make sure you're living up to a standard of relational connectedness so that you can get that love that you feel that is in short order, emotions can be repressed, and especially anger. This is where you must do the caring of you. Lean into that 4. As a 4, I lean into taking care of myself. Now, I have a very strong 2 component. I'm a therapist. I'm made a living of helping people, but I'm a little bit more of a Han Solo therapist than a Luke Skywalker therapist. There's mixed motives in it for me a bit. I'm a bit of a mercenary, and that's that 4 part. The Luke Skywalker part is a little bit more like, I'm doing this for the people. And that 2 can lean more into the 4 part, the healthy 4 part that says, I am going to do this for me, this relationship for me, this dynamic for me. I want to get a bit of what I need. And you have to tap into what your needs are and use that fuel of anger to say, what will I say no to and what will I say yes to? I've seen so many people in my life, dear folks in my life who are 2s, who have been trampled upon, and even by me. If I'm to be honest, if you let me get away with things, I will get away with things. Now, as I've grown older, I've gotten better at seeing that and corralling the part of me that wants to manipulate and take advantage and get what I want. But as a younger man, or even a boy, if I saw someone who had weak boundaries, there was a part of me that knew I can, unconsciously take advantage of them. So, resist that fear of being liked and embrace the idea that you will be rejected at times and practice being rejected so that you build a tolerance for it, and therefore the anger doesn't have to go underground and then bubble to the surface and explode or be passive. Now here's how we can lean into the 8. That part of you that you have, this 8 inside of you, that can be strong, can work for you, not against you. The 8 part says, I'm going to be direct, I'm going to be boundaried, I'm going to step into conflict, I'm going to get my needs met with power and authority. I will not be trampled upon and trounced upon or bulldozed. These hit and run moments in life are things that I no longer want to have as my design. And so we move to reality of saying, I have to get myself taken care of here. Yes, give to get, but also in an appropriate way, have mutuality where somebody is taking care of you too, and not have that compulsive need to meet other people's needs so much. Take care of your own personal needs. This is where you can have a really healthy relationship with anger. The anger at getting taken advantage of, and it's okay. Of course you feel that way. And when you're burning with hostility, of course you feel that way. Probably you're being taken advantage of. But can you also have a healthy relationship with that anger and share it with somebody? And if they can't handle it, then know that something in that relationship has to change. Now, you struggle with pride. This inflated sense of self, this inflated sense of importance. I know it's so covert for you. It doesn't feel like pride because you're taking care of so many other people. But there's this idea that everybody out there needs me. And that's kind of a hostile act towards the world. What if you pull back from that a little bit and was able to be vulnerable and see your weaknesses and look at your core motive and say, hey, maybe I actually have to appropriately and with reality see how I fit into this world and that I am cosmically small, just like everyone else. This actually frees us up. So we don't have to take the anger out on ourselves, because 2s are going to do that just as strongly as they want to take out some anger at the world for taking advantage of them. So know that we totally appreciate you befriending us, you coming into our lives and giving us that sense of belongingness. But also know that that is a thing to be cherished and appreciated. And of course you will feel anger when it's not. Of course you will. It is okay to feel that. Let that anger guide you into healthy relationships, first with yourself, then with others. Just a quick add-on for you 2s and for those in relationship with 2s. And if you're just watching this video and trying to get the best out of this, you know that for every number, there's these extremes. There's a spectrum. So with 2s, there's anyone from clueless and naive to negative and calculating. Those who are super self-sufficient and live in that prideful place of I can take care of you and me, and I can subjugate my needs somewhere else, and I have, in a sense, this kind of power to take care. And those who seemingly kind of fumble around and become prey. Those who look like predators, those who look like prey. Each, though, when they are unhealthy, is relentlessly downgrading themselves. So I just want to throw this on at the end. Be careful about where you are on that spectrum. And as you get healthy, the limiting of your need to prove yourself as lovable, letting that shed. and finding within yourself, or from God or from the universe, that you are lovable. And the self-sufficiency there is more authentic and real. Therefore, you can come into relationship with more authority, care, and less factors that get in the way and are keeping you from really being in a place where you can be rejected, because the person that you are with is worthy through mutuality of being a person that can reject you. That's true relationship. All right, threw that heavy shit on right there. Sorry. That was a truck doing the beep, beep, beep. Had to do it. All right, 3s ready to go? I hope so. I'm gonna start us out with a little story about younger Drew at 24 years old. I was in grad school and I had my first class in grad school, and it was domestic violence. The class was filled with primarily all females except for one older gentleman and a female teacher who wore dresses below her ankles every day. Kind of looked like she had 9 cats, maybe 10. Maybe even smelled a little like she had 9 cats or 10 cats. She was quirky and weird and kind of funky, but very bright. Did I say weird and funky? She was weird and funky. She got me after class one day and said, Drew, I'd like to tell you something. And I thought this was going to be some kind of great affirmation that I'd been doing great in the class. And she said, when you first walked into class on that first day, I saw a black cloud over your head. And there was a darkness there, Drew. And I would love for you to become the white wolf. But you are the gray wolf, and you have the potential to be the black wolf. And she went into this whole thing about wolves and the metaphor, and I don't hate the metaphor today, but it was jarring to me at the time. And essentially what she was saying is that I had the potential to be too much for clients, to be a black wolf and essentially cut them to pieces, chew them up. That I was actually a gray wolf, so there was hope for me that I wasn't going to rip shreds out of everyone. But the move towards this white wolf, and you get the metaphor color-wise, that white being more pure, that white wolf would be very careful with clients and take care of them and guard and protect them. Why the hell am I telling you guys this as 3s? Part of what I think she was identifying in me is the frustration that I had towards myself in my own pace in life, and the push that I naturally had to get the best out of myself, a bit of an aggressiveness towards self and haste in trying to kind of like magnify my gifts and strengths. And also how that, when I was doing that to myself, how I was going to naturally do that to others. How I was going to want them to push the pace. I was going to want to get the best out of them, and maybe too aggressively and maybe even hostilely push them faster than they can go. 3s with your anger. And I am a hard 4-wing 3. 3 is my second highest number when I score. We're constantly kind of looking for optimization. We're looking for the best way. We don't love to go at a slow pace. There is a directness and a drivenness that is constantly there. And so our anger is often turned towards and focused at gestation. What do I mean by gestation? The art of kind of slowly and methodically bringing something to birth. Not with haste, but with a slower pace. And so that anger is directed at, to ourselves and to others, the pace at which life must go to get the best out of things, which usually isn't our pace. So whether you're a careerist and in your work, you want your colleagues and the people that you're guiding to go faster, or your friends and your family, other students, that you are just like, guys, fucking catch up. Let's go. You know that acronym LFG, let's fucking go? It's perfect for threes. Many of my mentors in life before therapy were the types that I gravitated towards because there was this intensity. In their eyes, I could see the anger, and they were threes. The anger was at other folks who that were going to slow them down in life. This is so highly tied to shame. Let's get into shame just a little bit. The heart-centered folks, that's the 2s, 3s, and 4s, are in that shame triad. Shame is such a big part of our lives, and it's obvious, right? Because we're so image conscious. We so care about what people think and how people view us, that's intimately tied to shame. And 3s are at the core point of shame. You're also at the point in which you are the least likely to be aware of your emotions. 4s the most. 2s have like kind of a wrestling match with their emotions. They are unconscious to some and conscious to others, but they sit a lot in that subconscious, kind of knowing a little bit of what they're feeling. And you guys have the hardest time knowing what you're feeling. And so when shame is a component of your life and you're not as aware of it, you will have to defend yourself from it. And a lot of times that is through pushing. And there is a kind of violence to that. So when you're thinking about this type, and what do people think of me, and you're a bit haunted by, and some of your resistances are how you are being viewed, know that there is a pushback that's going to come from that. We don't want to feel shame. And so if we are called out for being wrong, if we are seen as being flawed, especially 3s, if they're not seen as being successful, or you get the thing wrong in front of people, or you're trying something and not succeeding at it in front of people, that hostility can be taken out on yourself or others. I have a lot of friends that are 3s that if we get into debates about something, or I say, no, you're wrong there, and then I prove it, they can get really pissed off. We are haunted by shame, all of us, but in the heart category, it is the strongest. And I think 3s tend to be probably the folks who push it back out on the world the most. 4s, for example, are going to take that on. There's something wrong with me. I have this missing part. 3s are likely to actually deny that shame a bit more, because the self needs to shine a bit there. 3s, more than anybody in the heart center, need to be a bit more aware and take some time without distraction with self-awareness. Self-awareness is usually the greatest indicator of success, just so you know, and your passion is the source of your suffering. That unconscious motivation is, can I be successful? Do you see me as successful? And so to gauge your emotions, because you are the least likely to tap into them and be aware of them, you actually are muting possibilities. What do I mean by that is when we're not naming our feelings and being aware of them, they're actually more likely to rule us. And therefore you're missing possibilities in success when you could be a bit more honed. The false self is the thing that is not true about you. It's this quote that the man I want to be, but who cannot exist because God does not know anything about that person. That is the false self. And it's kind of saying the universe or what is real is not what I'm putting out there. I'm putting out an image. And what I find will happen for 3s especially, as they are trying to find approval and pursue people digging them, and need to get that uber image out. There is a competitiveness, a power struggle, a play with confidence that is kind of wonky, because there is this concentration on what does the group need from me, and this need to avoid failure at all costs so that I could be seen as the achiever and doer. Here's where a lot of that comes out when you are not being engaged with your emotions and tapping into them and meditating and concentrating and contemplating on them, this stuff comes out in dreams. I found that a lot of threes have rich dream lives because a lot of the things they're struggling with, they start wrestling with in dreams. I know it sounds a little weird, but maybe even figure out how deeply insecure are you in your dreams? How naked do you feel? How angry are you in your dreams? You might not be as angry in your dreams because what's happening is actually the more softer, sensitive, vulnerable side is coming out there. And your sense of self and definition is trying to be formed there. So, threes, let's just take some time here. Think about this dynamic. We've got the need to be seen as accomplished, successful, got my shit together, and part of what you have to do that is be driven. You have to be aware of what to take in so that you can use it and produce and produce and produce. When you don't do that as well as you'd like, the shame kicks in. And then with shame, we usually defend ourselves with a bit of, well, often anger, because we're focusing on that specifically right now. And that anger could be taken out on yourself or others. Anywhere from like a self-preserver to a sexual, social, you're gonna do that in different ways. The movie star type, the sexual type, that version is taking on that performer role, wants to be seen. The social type is gonna have quite a bit more need for validation verbally. There's overtly a voraciousness about being the center of attention there. And there might be a bit more competitiveness where that movie star is just gonna kind of show themselves. And then that self-preserver is gonna be a bit more subtle with it, because with what they do with vanity is they want to hide it a bit. And that's how vain they are. They are so vain that they think they can hide it. That's their vanity. So as you're trying to develop a stronger sense of self, threes, what's core to you and not what is wanted from other people, think about how pissed off you get at yourself or others for not playing your game of haste, for not letting things gestate, ripen for the specific time when birth is appropriate. Threes are constantly trying to birth things too quick, and then things are premature. So, in my own life, with clients, with friends, with family, I have to not be the black wolf that's going, let's go. But try to move towards that white wolf that is protective, slow to anger, slow to hostility towards those who don't keep up, and being gentle with them. All right, I hope I made some sense there. That one felt a little wonky, but I'm gonna keep it because I think there's some gems in there. All right, I'm gonna stop now. Hey fours, I'm giving you a reprieve from my face. As a fellow four, I have found that I need certain environments to just give me room to process my anger. This is my garden. I've built the walls. I've dug. I've planted. I've dug. I've planted. I've pulled. I've planted again. I've seeded. And I've lost plants. I've gained plants. I've lost flowers. I've gained flowers. This is where I process so many of my emotions, and especially anger. So I hope that you too have places that you can go that are sacred to you, that you can process your emotion and specifically your anger. So let's jump into how we fours can work through our stuff. As I'm moving into the fall, I think about some psychological deja vu I've had in my life, and that is with anger. That the zapper that is anger strikes at me often. And for me, it's been a bit of a battle. As I've gotten a more honed awareness of it and found out what the borders of my anger are, it's been working for me more and more and more. I'm aiming it towards more of the things that I want to change in the world, and less of an kind of an infantile ego, whiny, lashing out moment like a child that it has acted as. We fours are highly sensitive. Our moods are labile. They shift and they turn. And when we are lonely, when we feel rejected, we often lash out at ourselves or at the world with anger. And this is a bit of our battle to fight. That anger is the daughter of fear, and our fear is mediocrity, of not being original, not being seen, not being understood. And when we aren't seen and understood, we tend to undo connections. We then tend to drive to separate, which requires a type of aggression. And this is fueled, I think, if we really are honest with ourselves, specifically by shame. We just talked about the 2s and 3s. We all live in that shame world together. And ours is the shame of not being seen and understood. I should have more attention for being me, we often say to ourselves in some way or another. So there is a part of us that has to die to become. I remember a moment for me, I said in the beginning of this video that anger was one of the things that I specifically went to go get therapy from very early on. And me pushing my anger to the sides, sticking it in the margins, and educating myself on it was actually one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And usually it required me to step down, not step up. That's the way I've had to experience my anger. It is so at the surface, so ready to be fulfilled, so patrolling, so engulfing at times. Its heat is ready to be taken from a slow simmer to a massive raging burn. That when I've chosen to look inward and step back and let it die a bit, that's been the wilder moment for me, the more powerful moment that has actually stepped me up in my ego control, in my ego resolve, to simply say, I am going to forget self a bit, to not engulf and engorge myself, but let it pull back, to go beyond anger, fall on my knees a bit daily, and actually letting myself move into a place where proper proportions are utilized. I remember a moment in which I just had a standoff with this stranger. It's just a moment where two guys were a little bit egocentric and wanted to prove themselves, and I stepped back in a moment where I knew that stepping up could have been seen as way more powerful. And that was one of the hardest moments for me. To just move into a place of pulling into obscurity, not needing to show and shine. So this is one of the ways I want you to look at anger if you fours struggle with this specific type, in which you are frustrated with the world for not seeing you. Our anger will often derive from what we hold dearest, and what fours hold dearest is being seen, valued, understood, taken into account. And subconsciously, unconsciously, and maybe for you more woke folks, consciously, you feel slighted. And can we go beyond those feelings that react to the feeling of slight? Anger is one of those that says, hey, let me get primitive for a minute. I'm going to push back because I feel oppressed. I feel oppressed by not being seen. This is that idea of schadenfreude. We hear this all the time as fours, is that there is a part of us that is kind of delighting, finding joy in the failures of others. Why? Because we feel like we haven't gotten our due. So why would we want other people to get their due? This is the most primitive of the fours working through their anger. We can look at a person and instantly judge and critique them because we are emotional elitists. They must be ignorant, blind, not self-aware. Can you create a new pathway to grace, kindness, and patience with others, where everything belongs, even those who are taking their time, or those who are more successful to us, even though we think that they shouldn't be? That we can walk down a street, and when we have someone in our way, walk around them instead of walking right through them and saying, everything belongs. We are not entitled to these streets. We are not entitled at all. Now, you as a 4 might not struggle with this much. Maybe for you, it is more about, how do I tap into my anger? How do I find my anger? How do I advocate on my behalf? Then you have to take the anger from the margins and maneuver it to the front of the line a bit. Give it a pulpit. Uncork it. Deploy and let it evolve in the world a bit. Now, let me talk about this. This is a unique one, I think, for us. And I don't know that as many other numbers struggle with this, but I've noticed this is huge in my life. And when I get called out by friends, and if you've watched the full video, you know that I recently got called out by my friends. And one of the reasons was because of this specific issue, which is emotional hazing. We are constantly wondering, are people deep enough? Let's test them. Let's accelerate the relationship. Let's see if they can stand the test of emotional depth, daring people to be brave and surfacing their shadow. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. We can push the pace, friends. Now, how much of that is about you finding worth? Inflating yourself. Wanting a bit of admiration for all of the hard work you've done, all of the self-awareness, all of the self-exploratory stuff that you've gone through, and wanting to be recognized and sweetly rewarded for that. And so actually there is an anger and a frustration that you use when you are emotionally hazing because you are kind of subtly pissed off that you have had to do so much work and other people haven't. You following me? Maybe because of your history of rejection, maybe because your history in which you weren't seen, that you are trying to express more fully. And so there is this kind of painful psychological adjustment you have to go through, psychological chiropractic, when people call you out for not being patient with them. Remember, the hardest thing to say is, I feel rejected, and 4s have felt rejected. But when we emotionally haze too aggressively, we are actually possibly running over people and, in a sense, rejecting them, saying you aren't worthy. Here's another one. We can definitely be pioneers emotionally and spiritually. We run a little bit ahead of the crowd and set some of the contours for those coming behind us, shaping for them a little bit of what it looks like to wrestle with the deep stuff. We have this kind of gravitational pull in which we pull people into depth with us, which is pretty cool. But that kind of pioneering is lonely. And because so much of the shadow is surfaced there, it can trigger some need to be taken care of. And then we can kind of become an ass because there is a part of us that now is tired from pioneering and saying, take care of us. And so therefore, we're requiring folks to be a lot for us there. And that is a bit of also just an invisible thing to us. There's some kind of an invisibility that is amplified when people actually push back on us a bit more and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You chose that. So don't put your frustration on us. And again, remember, anger is such a broad spectrum. This might be so subtle, But in our attempts to be a person of authority and finding that independence and autonomy in self to become that actualized, authentic, original person, we have had to do it alone at times. And then we've been pissed off at the world for seemingly abandoning us, even though we've done it on our own. It's kind of romantic, right? But we're the romanticists. So when you feel outcast, outlawed, and the pity starts coming in, be aware of how you might take that out on others. Joseph Campbell says this: the child of destiny has to face a long period of obscurity. This is the time of extreme danger, impediment, or disgrace. He is thrown inward to his own depths or outward to the unknown. Either way, what he touches is a darkness unexplored. I must tell you that if you go down that road, there will be liberty there, but there will also be loneliness, and you might want to actually take that loneliness out on people. I know this is an extensive 4 moment, and for those of you listening in that aren't 4s, it might have been a bit self-involved because that's what we do. But know that we are also trailblazers with emotions. So 4s, it is our job to really understand and fulfill our awareness of anger. So we are not as much distressed by it, but we are motivated by it. It works for us, not against us. It doesn't cause drought. It calls lushness and bounty. Yes, I just said bounty. And I think if I'm using bounty in this process, I need to get off the road here and just let you be with these thoughts. I hope you enjoyed my garden. I think it's beautiful. All right, folks. That is anger for the 4s. Hey, Enneagram 5s. Let's get into anger. Yes, I'm in a different position. If you've watched any of my videos, I'm usually sitting on a seat and not on a cushion. But it is about 6:30 in the morning here in New York City, and I am just finishing up my meditation. It's a Saturday. And yes, I've seen about maybe 30 clients this week. I'm exhausted. My emotional bandwidth is really depleted. My social capital, in a sense, the money I have to spend on socializing is diminishing. My pockets, if I pull them out, there's not much in them. So I'm waking up early, trying to take care of myself. You guys get where I'm going with this, I think. There is something that happens for 5s. Now, I'm a 4 wing 3, but I really have been leaning into my 5 in the last few years and being more aware of my introversion. Now, I'm not saying that all 5s are crazy introverts, but there is a certain amount of withdrawal that you guys need to take care of yourself, to disengage, to pull back. Now, 4s, 5s, and 9s are in that withdrawal triad. We pull back and say, what is going on here in a moment? What's happening here? How much energy do I need? How much interaction do I want to have in this environment? So 9s can pull back mentally. Emotionally, 4s pull back. 5s tend to physically pull back, protecting themselves from getting energy zapped. We can get tired very easily. So as the energy is dwindling away, that quintessential introvert starts speaking up and saying, protect yourself. Now, why am I talking about this with anger? What I find in my own life is that when I am not protecting that space and I enter into an environment when I don't have the energy, I can be a real dickhead, quite frankly. My moods are labile, they're shifting. And so there is this type of ferocity that I have internal about protecting my space. I sense what people need from me. And there is a hypersensitivity that comes, and there's a part of me that wants to be not involved, a non-involvement, a detachment. My boundaries become pretty clear. 5s, I think, understand this and respect this. But when we are not taking care of ourselves, we can get into situations in which we're not clear. We're not caring for the people around us and sharing with them what we can and cannot do. So this requires you guys to actually step into a place to gauge your emotions, specifically your anger and your exhaustion. And then, if need be, trying to have brief conversations, not to overwhelm yourself because you're already tired, with the people you love so that they don't expect too much from you. You guys are already kind of prone to loneliness, some kind of emotional emptiness at times. There's a feeling of a vacuumous expanse, I think, for fives from what I've experienced with them and when I lean into my five wing. That as a child, you've often spent a lot of time in solitary states. Maybe love was deprived. There was a coldness to your house. And so you escaped, maybe that into book reading, into fiddling around with gadgetry. And you became that investigator. You leaned into that, fostering some of these gifts. It's a beautiful thing. But the world still seems pretty loud to you and you need to get away. This is why you guys are at some level the true Ebenezers. The Ebenezer Scrooges, and I don't mean that in such a negative sense, but that scarcity mindset that I have to withhold what I have because otherwise it will be spent inappropriately, and so I have to prepare for the future. This is what dragons in mythology kind of represent. Dragons protect gold and protect virgins in a sense. They hoard virgins and they hoard gold in different cultures. Both things they cannot use. Think about Smaug in The Hobbit, or Scrooge McDuck. He has his room of coins. That mindset, that scarcity mindset pulls us back and says, we need to protect everything. Some of that you do. And so there is this engagement from isolation to engagement. And how does anger fit in there for you? How do you get angry at yourself for not being social enough? How do you take that out on yourself? And how do you take out on the world them needing you or wanting you? Can you lean into your kindness capacity, both for yourself and for others? Right now I'm doing that with this meditation. Taking the time out to be kind to myself and actually practicing kindness meditation in a sense. I think it's called meta meditation. It's this idea of working through being kind to myself and others, picking out specific people just to orient myself today because I've had a long week of deep engagement. And so I'm sensitized to needs of others, to energy of others. So I want to foster and appreciate and not be oppressive to self with the energy I have. To maybe loosen up some of the, just like massage, loosen up some of the emotional muscles. Whew. I'm getting very serious in the morning, but fives can handle that, right? Because when I lean into my five, or you just being a five, there is this kind of intensity to the search for the thing I want to ingest and devour. So as I move on here from the cushion to the seat, know that I appreciate how hard it is for you to engage sometimes when it isn't on your terms. And know that for you, anger is going to be both a tool for help, telling me how I need to be in this environment. Saying no to things is using your anger. But also, can you say yes because you've actually appropriately prepared? From the cushion to the chair, we are back at it. Let's explore this other avenue here. Let's explore some of the Solomonic vibes. Why do I say Solomonic? I mean Solomon from the Bible. This character of wisdom. If you guys were to have an animal as your example of who you are as fives, it would be the owl. The idea of wisdom and using what you've learned to shape and shift people. But how many of us have seen fives that use their anger to fuel tearing someone down, to diminishing them, to dislocating them from their confidence? Think about that. In times, when have you tried to dislocate someone from their confidences by tearing them down because you had knowledge in an area that they didn't? I know I do this quite a bit. When I am feeling insecure, there is a type of way that I can take somebody into an emotional depth in which I'm very comfortable, to almost unclothe them, to make them naked, and to equal us out, to make sure that they don't have any leverage of power against me. So I've seen fives do this, and I know I do this. So when you are out there with the power of knowledge and your area of expertise, be concentrated on how your omnicompetence can actually shit all over someone else. Can you be purpose driven? Now this is quite different. When somebody is in a position of moving with purpose, they know their why in the world. And it's attached to this research they do, this investigation they do, and then they bring forth something. They let it be birthed. They usually aren't as defensive. They don't take on the victim role as much. They let something incubate and hatch. They don't push it to birth. Or they don't, in a sense, strong word, abort someone else's birthing of something in their time. You can be hazardous with your confidence in your area of expertise. Now, so many people think that fives are the most intelligent scholars in the world. Often they are. But there is an intelligence just as much to something like IT, or janitorial experiences. I've met janitors who are so sharp about how to tinker with things, to investigate them and know them well. And there's that classic trope that people with these kind of expertise will make you feel like crap because you don't know it. Can you marshal in and harbor a sense of safety for someone who doesn't know as much as you? And also, can you be kind to yourself as you're learning things, that you don't beat yourself up too much and take that anger out on yourself for not having had enough elucidated to yourself, therefore kind of forfeiting some kind of role in the world as worthiness. I'm muffling up a lot of things right now. But God, I'm glad I'm doing it with a 5 that could totally judge me for being a dumbass. I'm going to let it sit. I'm not going to change this because there's a part of me even right now that wants to take it out on myself. To be violent towards myself for stumbling and bumbling. So can I have a spirit of kindness towards myself and others as I live in my confidences? Can I penetrate them with actual wisdom and not penetrate them in a way that is abusive and victimizes them? That is our goal as crafters of some kind of area of expertise, as folks who develop and move towards and embrace how beautiful it is to dig into things. Can we share that with the world in a way that actually makes them excited about it? Excite people to what you are excited about. Weird ways to look at anger for 5s, but I think beautiful. So thank you for meditating with me and then just sitting with me and chatting. All right. So I'm hoping that all of you are continuing to watch each number, and 6s are going to be really important for us. I think the 4s and the 6s look the most varied when you add on the subtype. So sexual, one-on-one, social, or self-preserver, when you add these distinctions to the 4 and the 6, they look like very different numbers. So a lot of people that are 4s and 6 mistype, but I think it's good for us when we're dealing with anger because a self-preserving 6 and a sexual 6 will look radically different in their energy of aggressiveness or passivity. So we got the sexual 6 that is the counterphobic type, or the type that looks the most aggressive, looks the most powerful. Their best defense is a good offense. So even though their sin or their primary passion is suffering, and their unconscious motivation, as all 6s are, is to be safe and secure and supported, they will push back on the world a bit. Now, if we take this other extreme, which is the self-preservers, we have this soft, tender, charming type who's friendly and approachable. So they ensure a contract with you of allegiance through their warmth, while the 6 might come off as really actually hot. Okay, so think about just now, take a pause and think about, do you know where your anger is coming from? Do you know how it can be channeled and fueled? Most of us don't have a good gauge on that. So you can imagine if you're a 6, there's a lot of confusion here, because there's times when even a sexual 6 is going to be sinking into their self-preserver, or the social is going to be sinking into the sexual, and they can come off as different energies, maybe sometimes pretty quickly, or jumping back and forth. So if we have this sexual type who's the most aggressive and the least obviously fearful, they move towards action. And then we have the self-preserver who will shrink for you, who will kind of like tail between their legs for another person. And the social is going to be also pretty obedient, sometimes demonizing those that are taking advantage or seem to be taking advantage, but still fearful of disapproval. Well, it could be really hard for the 6 to know where their anger is coming from, how to place it, and they might even call what is actually anger something totally different. I've been in relationships with 6s as clients and friends where I can tell that they were angry about something, but it showed up really wonky. And like 9s, sometimes you can be passive aggressive, and it's kind of confusing, like where are they at? It can be hard to, in a relationship, gauge a 6. Because there is this kind of theme for them, which is, can I really trust anyone in leadership? Can I really trust friends? I have to test people. I call this emotional hazing, in a sense. There's this hazing of people, and it's very subtle for a 6, of testing them to say, do they have what it takes to support me? Because they are concerned about being dominated, bullied, exploited. They are aware that they can easily sometimes slip into the underdog role. So to gauge where that anger is going to be very important for them. So I want to tell you, 6s, to just constantly be thinking about, in a day, let's take a week, for example, where are my anger levels at? And am I showing another emotion that actually might be hiding the anger? Is my affection actually hiding some kind of mistrust and wanting to push back, which is anger? Is my obedience to someone, is that a way of kind of containing the anger inside and giving myself to someone so I don't have to make a tough decision? Again, anger helps us make tough decisions, helps us say no and yes to things. Is my aggressiveness actually about sadness, fear, pain? And so my anger is up front and pushing forward when actually I'm feeling a lot of other things. So remember, the unconscious motivation is to be safe, secure, supported. This is great with anger, for when we are using anger well, we are doing it to create safety, security, and support. Now, 6s can go to that place of projecting onto people experiences of evil and darkness onto them, that the world is going to make a victim out of me, and I have to see who is the dark souls out there. This is a kind of anger. This is a kind of no to people. So they project that fear onto others, assuming people's ill will. And so they're entering into other people's heads. Here's where I could say, okay, I know that a lot of 6s are coming from a place of hurt, right? But can you thaw a bit? get out of here because you guys are in the headspace, 5, 6s, and 7s, and maybe get into the body and heart and thaw a little bit, relax. Pause to name the emotion and then decide how you want to engage that emotion. 6s can project their own limitations and weaknesses onto others and punish those others for it. This way they don't have to take responsibility. They can put that stuff over there. And we know how hard it is to look at our own shadow. Our shadow is a thing that is naturally and self-explanatory. It's elusive. It requires us to look back and really check into ourselves. And so as we play with anger, we have to, as 6s, play with the idea that we are going to naturally, because our fear is pretty high and the world is untrustworthy, going to put a lot of that anger onto the world. And it's going to be, like I said before, a bit wonky. And can you trust yourself with that anger? The only way you can is to practice it, to learn it, to really be keen to it. So, as you are at times invalidating yourself, because a 6 can do that, say, maybe I can't trust myself. Can you use that anger, the part that says yes or no to things, to be a bit more certain in your opinions, in your thoughts, in your passions? And also, can you use that anger to say, that person isn't trustworthy. I'm going to push away from them, appropriately so, because I'm good at having a keen eye on who is and isn't safe. That's okay. But then don't become the victim of it and live in a world in which you're just constantly saying, the world can't hold me, can't protect me. There's also this part of a 6 that can be very rain on the parade, rain on people's parade, you know? Find the things that are wrong instantly and say, this is the thing to watch out for. We actually appreciate that about you, because at times it's really great to challenge and to push against people who are flowing too quick, who are not risk averse enough. So we need you. But I'll challenge you to gauge whether that is about an over fear or an appropriate fear. Because again, our anger is going to be there by our side. And if it's healthily used, it's going to keep us from danger. Let's go to this other place though. And I think this is for all of us, but I like it with 6s because it's such an extreme, right? There's that counterphobic 6 and the phobic 6, the one who doesn't want to leave the house at one extreme, and the one who wants to push against everyone. This is my idea of Tyson to Teresa, Teresa to Tyson. Mike Tyson to Mother Teresa, from strength and power to tenderness. Now, obviously, both characters are tender and both characters are powerful. And the trick is, how do they appropriately show it? Let me give you 2 other ones. Larry David to Tim Robbins? Tony Robbins? Tony, big guy, big hands. Not your guru. Tony Robbins to Larry David, the cynical to optimistic side too. Because 6s and all of us can live in there. So, David to Robbins, Tyson to Teresa, what's in this middle? It is a powerful interaction of strength and tenderness, the best of all 4 of those characters, and the best utilization of anger towards a cause. All 4 of those characters kind of have a cause or a mission or a passion. And when they are using and fueling their anger right, they become very, very successful and also create change. That is what we're all pursuing. So as you think of Tyson to Teresa, David to Robbins, can you think about how complicated anger is? Because it is. And how much practice it requires to know when we are feeling it, why we are feeling it, and where to place it. Whew. This was a tough one to teach, and I hope that there's enough layers in here for all of us, not just sixes, and that there is something to take for the purpose of moving missions forward, moving ourselves forward, and protecting ourselves, finding security, safety, and support from the appropriate people in the appropriate places. Ooh, sevens, you are a squirrely bunch. You guys can avoid negative emotions in such a way that is like magic and profoundly creative. You guys bob and weave in a way that is different than most, so I commend you for being able to do this. Let's start with a couple triads that you are involved with. One is the idealists. I'm an idealist, I'm a 4. I see the world in such a way that I want everything to be deep and meaningful and nothing missing, to be totally original. And the ones, they're part of this group, they want perfection. Can't the world be perfect? Can't you guys all get it right and do right and wrong well and good and bad well, and you don't screw it up too much by imperfection? Okay, that's the ones. Now you sevens, whoo, pain-free. Can't the world be pain-free? Well, if it's going to be pain-free, then we're going to have to avoid pain, and anger is a recognition that there's some pain in us. There's some discomfort in us. There's something that needs to happen. Something needs to change. I need to set a boundary. It's kind of hard for a 7. Now let's look at this other group, which is the group of positive outlooks. 2s, 7s, 9s. Now 2s have this positive outlook for others' needs. 9s for the needs of both parties. Like, how can I bring people together? And 7s for their own needs. So not only are you idealists in the way that you want to avoid pain, but you also want to take care of yourself. Woo, utopia, utopia. It will not happen. But nor will apocalypse, likely. So, sit in this space to know that you guys are rule breakers. Or at least you want the world to look in a certain way that the rules don't apply to you. That there is this idealism of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. And there is this rule-breaking kind of concept that I can have a positive outlook and avoid and shed things that feel discomforting. Now, if you're a healthy 7, you've worked through a lot of this. But know always that 7s are spontaneous, quick on their feet, agile. They have a great recovery time. They are optimists and they are improvisers. So they're gonna be good at shifting around, moving around, just like the Matrix, like moving around bullets of pain. So it's idealism to the extreme. And it is like the 4, some kind of dreamy delirium that I can avoid certain stuff. This speaks to the John Milton quote in Paradise Lost. The mind is its own place. It can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. Now, us 4s can make a hell of heaven, but you 7s can make a heaven of hell. And one of the things that's really important for you guys to remember is that your high side and your low side, that's where you go in stress and insecurity, are both not heart-centered. Let me say that again. They're both not heart-centered. You and the 5s do this. So you guys both don't have heart-centered numbers attached to you in your high and low side. Additionally, your wings are both not in the heart. So this makes it very difficult for you to tap into your feelings in a really concentrated and focused way. You have to really practice at that and put a lot of work into it. And part of this movement from gluttony to sobriety, especially when we're talking about anger or kind of negative feelings, bad feelings, is that you need to know how potent you are when you acknowledge pain. And anger is pain. Anger is telling us something's wrong, something's out of sorts, there's a discomfort, and I need to make some kind of boundary. So in sobriety, we are ready to receive. And what we're ready to receive is emotion. Again, you guys have to make a leap to this and really work hard at it. And one of the problems is that many sevens have this feeling that it's not okay to depend on someone else. For some reason in your background, you probably needed to shelve some emotion, and based on your wiring also, that you had a lot of energy, a lot of positivity. But there might have been a fear of abandonment if I share my pain. So nothing really gets to me is a concept that many sevens live with. Like, I'll be okay. I'll specialize in joy. That'll be my defense mechanism. So there's no rain or wind that can, cloud that can blow me over or take me out or make me go into a funk. Can you just do the thing in front of you, the motion in front of you? Can you acknowledge it? Try to register it. And again, like some of the other numbers, acknowledge and register it. Take some time. Write out, like, what am I feeling right now? What's going on in my body? What's going on in my head? And can you stick to some of that tough stuff so that you can have tough conversations, which is where I think a lot of sevens grow in a lot of maturity. They have restraint for the long haul. And the restraint part is that they restrain themselves from just jumping ahead, fast forwarding. It's like, with your DVR, and you're just fast forwarding to get through the commercials. And the commercials in this sense are kind of like the pain, the funky stuff, some of the anger. Can you actually not fast forward? Maybe even going slow motion to really gauge what's going on for you. And not move to that place of like, everything's good. Let's get as much out of life as possible. Let's do the exciting, the more thrilling things. Because I don't want to miss out. And this thing is like slowing me down. This feeling is slowing me down. It's a bit like the 3 can do. And then you have this 2, 7, 9 thing. Again, these are the positive outlook folks that are going to have a lot of difficulty openly sharing negative emotions like anger. So for all of us, we got to continue to remember how hard it is for certain of us to share anger and how easy it is for certain of us to share anger. So just think right now, where are you in that world? I've been going through the numbers, and some of them have a real difficulty sharing anger. Some of them have a real ease with it. And then based on your subtype, you might have more or less of an ability. Shift from the easy to the difficult. Don't skip to the future, fast forward too quick. Stay rooted, slow down. Feel the feels. Don't alienate us from you and from yourself by avoiding these important emotions. Now, no doubt, anger is fueling you some way. It's already working. And often it'll be working for and against you, sevens. Wouldn't you rather be more aware of it? Maybe not. But you squirrely folks, I think you got it in you. Think of Freud's quote, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and they will come forth later in uglier ways." This is the root of psychology. A lot of what Freud was talking about early on, these are the core principles of what I do for a living. And some of that is that you will push down certain emotions and repress or suppress them, and they will come out in uglier ways. So we might as well get to it. So my challenge to you sevens is allow yourself to slow down. Feel the feels, then try to work with those feels and do something with them. All right, don't fast forward too quick, folks. Let those commercials come, and maybe you'll buy something that you like because you were inspired by great advertisement. Let it go now. Oh, now we come to the 8s. No BS, no nonsense, just get it done, less talky, more doey. They will be disgusted with your timidity, with your rigidity, with your lack of confidence, with other entities. You get it. This is kind of the quintessential character who knows how to use anger for their ways and means. They are energetic, blunt, assertive, and their go-to emotion is anger. Yes, anger. But they do have a soft underbelly. They do have the ability to feel. Trust me, I have mates in my lives, and eights in my lives, you get it. There's eights that I know, and they feel. I've seen tears, literal tears from the eights, but they never stop. There's always a pushing of the pace, and while they might have compassion, empathy, it is usually hidden by their works, by their drivenness, by their movement forward. And they can lose track of their emotions. They can go unidentified because they are progressing forward relentlessly. And that is something that many of you have probably experienced the bulldozerness of it. But also, I would say that I, especially in my work, use the 8 as an example, especially for like 2s, 7s, 9s, those power of positivity folks, those folks that can let people run over them or don't feel the anger inside, don't let the kind of burn inside work for them. I point them to the 8s. In that category of gut people, 8, 9s, and 1s, the 8s overdo anger, the 9s underdo anger, and the 1s are in conflict with anger. But the gut people are kind of like, here I am, this is what you got, deal with me. And they live in the present a bit more. So with 8s, they're a bit more of that direct, assertive, aggressive type, and they demand their territory. And often, they have an oppositional energy. So how do you guys work on your anger? Well, one is, it's not wrong, right? We've been talking about this the whole time, is that anger is not necessarily negative. It's only negatively used at times. And sure, the 8 can go way overboard with it. You know, their unconscious motivation is to assert power and strengthen an environment to avoid vulnerability and weakness. And so if they are not aware of their weaknesses and they are not aware of where they are at emotionally, they can run over people and not be aware of others' feelings and needs. So I can also relate, embrace, and commiserate with 8s who say, why am I the one who has to say this thing? Why do I have to actually call this thing out? That's what they will often do. They are necessarily impatient, yes, but they see weakness and indecisiveness and are disgusted by it. They are, wanting to take care of the vulnerable, but also frustrated with the vulnerable for being so vulnerable. And this is where their anger is sparked. One can be frustration at people not kind of getting it, but 2, frustration at the abused, not necessarily abused, but like how people can abuse. And the beauty of this is when they see something inauthentic, when they see when you being a bullshitter, when you being phony, when you being fake, they will be disgusted by that. And there's kind of a cool thing that happens is they can get people to be more authentic. Much in the way that a 4 can by being authentic and original. The 8 can push a person with an intensity towards authenticity and originality. They require you to be responsible for yourself. And this is where they use their anger the best. When they say, be responsible for you. Don't blame me for calling you out and showing you through strength and candor where you're weak. I don't want to waste my time. They're not going to hold on to the anger, though, in the same way. If you don't catch up, they'll be done. And so 8s will actually move away from folks who waste their time, especially when they're healthy 8s. Now, when they're unhealthy 8s, they can get caught up in the abyss of a relationship. But the 8 is saying, with their anger, and it might be frustration, peeved, it might be rage-filled. Again, this is a broad spectrum. Get your shit together. And there is a frustration for them that they have to be the person to tell you, because it feels like they have to take the lead in that respect quite a bit. But when you face the 8, it's like Carl Jung says, only one who has risked the fight with the dragon and is not overcome by it wins the treasure hard to attain. She or he alone has a genuine claim to self-confidence, for they have faced the dark ground of his or herself, and thereby has gained themselves. This experience gives them faith and trust. Coming up against an 8's frustration actually can get you more strengthened and confident and more command in yourself. So they don't want to withhold too much because they see the potential in you. Thank you, New York City, for being the honkers of the horn. Right now, an 8 is coming through. It is the street cleaner. Oh, and most people moved out of his way. Okay. The beauty of an 8 is also the beauty of a 4 and a 6, is that they are authenticity junkies. And they live in a triad of wanting to be emotionally real, the emotionally realness triad. And what they are saying is, can you be authentic? Can you be real? Don't be phony, don't be fake. And so therefore, that oppositional energy of them actually works for us. But when they are unhealthy, or when you 8s are unhealthy, you can overdo it. You're spitting the dragon's fire too much. And so when you are battling with people, when you're fighting with people, ask yourself this question. Am I trying to prove something here? And to who and why? Why am I so adamant? Why am I so bold right now? Why am I so brazen? Am I dislocated from my emotion? Do I know what I'm feeling here, or are they going unidentified? So what we are asking for as 8s is for you to express and be yourself and be bold and be strong so we can live in a relationship with you. Because the 8 wants relationship also. And also they want to know, just like the 4 and 6, where do I stand? Where do I stand in this relationship? If I can't trust you, then I can't be in this relationship in a way that actually can benefit both of us. So don't see the relationship with the 8 as the deathward spiral. But as them using anger to actually get the best out of you. 8, when you are unaware of your emotions, just like all the other numbers who have to look at their emotions and know what they are so they know where they're at in a relationship, be aware of how highly intensified this anger is. It's so common for you to feel it. It's so easy for you to distribute it that you might not be aware of how heavy it can come off, or what level you're at with it from 1 to 10. From peeved to pissed off. From rage-filled to, mildly disturbed. This is your call to wield this sword wisely. Know when to pull it out, when to put it back. All right, dragons. Go and, burn the right stuff. Cut with the sword the right things, metaphors. You got it. Go do it. Peace out. My lovely, lovely friends, the 9s. Oh, I have so many of you that are friends, and so many of you have sucked the wrath of my anger. I apologize, but tell me something. Have I not helped you get your anger out? Yes, I have. So many 9s in my life, I've helped them get their anger out because I am a pain in the ass, and they've had to put that anger somewhere. But, as John Steinbeck says, you can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a very, very fast pig. So, do I want you to be a person who distributes the amount of anger that I can distribute in the world? No. That would make you a Mustang. No, I just want you to be a very friggin' fast pig. So let's go into this. You guys can be, like I've said before, a bit more like vapor than solid. You sit between the 8s and the 1s. One of the numbers that has the easiest ability to access anger. And then one of the numbers that is pretty angry, that's their sin, wrath, or anger, the 1s, but they're conflicted about it. And you guys underdo anger. So it's kind of like that thing I say with 9s who live in New York City. When they walk out of their apartment, they're already saying, this is too much. Their energy could be depleted very quickly just by walking out the door. And so I have so many times probably overwhelmed 9s to the point of retreat. I have finished 9 sentences because they are a bit more analog than digital. Like, I'm pretty fast with my emotions. I'm a 4. You know, I'm triggering into my emotions really quick, and I can name them and I can do something with them. And a 9 is taking a long time to get to that feeling. What am I feeling? And so I often ask 9s, where are you between 2 thoughts? Because they can get stuck in these 2 thoughts, just like they can be stuck between the 8 and the 1, and then be kind of paralyzed by it. And so they have to slow down. All body types want autonomy and respect. But when you're a 9, you're often, unless you have a very strong 8 wing, or a self-preserving 9, which I'll get to, they're a bit more capable of accessing anger. To get that autonomy and respect, it takes more work to get, more digging, more drilling internally into the subterranean regions to figure out what you're feeling. So, of course, this makes anger really wonky. And I'm using me as an example, but a 4 is pretty good, accurate example here. They can often pick up the anger that's going on for a 9 when the 9 doesn't even know that they're feeling it. We can sense it. We can see it in your body. We can see it in your face. So you have to slow down to get started. That's the sloth part. Slowing down to get started a bit. But can you do that? Can you slow down to see what you're feeling and go, oh, there's the anger, and it's appropriate here. That's the other part, is once the anger is revealed, then the question is it okay? Because if my main internal motivation is to avoid conflict, maintain connection, to maintain a status quo, a peace, then I am often going to say everything's okay, everything is equal. You know, all things are okay. I have to love this person. I have to be okay with the way that person said that to me. And this is where they can vicariously embody the 8 and the 1's ability to tap into the anger, or the 4, or the 5, like any other number that has that more capable access. We've said that the 2s, 7s, and 9s are going to have the toughest time not only finding the anger, but then distributing it. But the 2s, 7s, and 9s, when they start practicing anger, woo, baby, I love it. It becomes very conflicting for them because they start getting pissed off at a lot of things. And then they wonder if it's okay to be pissed off at a lot of things. And then they start feeling despair because, oh my gosh, I'm feeling anger about a lot of things. And what do I do with all of it? Will I deunionize with people? Will I unmerge with people? Will I break relationships if I feel this anger? But we want more direct communication, not this indirect communication, that's passivity, that passive aggression. So to gain deep intimacy, it requires confrontation. Gosh, these street cleaners are coming again. They did for the 8s, now they're coming for the 9s. Okay, it's good. I see you. Woo. Deep intimacy requires confrontation, conflict, regularly. So, don't steal people's disappointment in you. I'm going to say that again. Don't steal people's disappointment in you away from them. I want to be disappointed in my friends that are 9s because they push back. and say, hey, you ran over me when I was trying to finish that sentence. Give me some time here. They honor me by sharing where they're at and sharing their anger. And so you have to take responsibility for your feelings. Become a faster friggin' pig. Some of you have held friends and family, coworkers hostage by being passive with your aggression. You just have. You've made us wait, and that's part of the agenda, and it might be unconscious to you that you're doing that you're rigid in your passivity. And you're so good at being passive that you have found a way to really push back on the world. And what we're asking for is you to see what's possible. Avoid developing that habit where it's dulled and blunted and not sharp-edged and snoozy, but actually directed, accurate, assertive. And again, you do not have to be the most angry person in the world. It just needs to be ratcheted up a little bit so you're more integrated. This will require of you self-promotion, boldness. Nines don't want to take up too much space, but you have to put your flag in the ground of self-assertion and have hard conversations. So utilize that anger as a leverage point to get closer to people, to luxuriate in your anger, and err on the side of arrogance or confidence. I'd rather you err on the side of arrogance than try to find the perfect place of confidence and humility. Humility is not about being passive. Humility is about being your true self, and your true self has a level of anger in it that is probably comparable to even the most rage-filled person. I've told people this before, that I think that anger is equally distributed. It's just about how you distribute it to the world. It's all living in us with a certain amount of power. And then what do we do with it? So the nines are the most likely to be systematically self-restrictive. Creating tension is so provoking for you that that movement towards peace gets so pulley that the anger has to do something and it gets passive. But it's still out there, and a lot of people are noticing it, and we're confused because you're so good at it. It's oozy. So don't let it leak. Turn the faucet off of the drippy stuff and either keep it off because the anger's not there, or turn it on so it flows well and distributes appropriately. Self-preservers, I just want to get to this, is that they're kind of the subtle steamroller. Forceful yet feathery, I say. And they could be ignorant or an annihilator. So I've seen them be very direct, most in touch with their 8. So you do have to watch out because it can be confusing to the person that's responding to that. That there is this strong philosophical stance. They set the pace a little quicker than the other 9s, and they're unbreakable routines. If you do try to break them, they'll just push against you pretty hard. So even you self-preservers, I'm just using you as an example. It's not that I'm trying to delete or withhold about the sexual and the social, but that intensity, that emotional, a bit more emotionally obvious component, that more turbulent stuff, if you can find the right frequency for it, it's really fair to your friends and family and coworkers to just accumulate kind of more skills with your anger. So 9s, don't go to sleep on your anger, and it will be weird for you. And you're gonna wonder, is it okay to be this way? And get some feedback. Get some feedback from the people in your life that do distribute it better. A lot of my 9 clients will talk to me like, was it okay to do this in this moment? Is it okay to confront this person? They need a little bit more schooling there, and that's okay. So be open to it and allow it to come in. That is my call to you nines. So we are ending on a high note here, I think, working with one of the numbers that has the most difficulty. And we started with the ones that have a bit more access to it. Thank you for being with me on this journey of anger. It was very therapeutic for me to just process through the 9 different ways that because I have all these numbers inside of me, have to work through my anger. If you want to get in touch with me, contact with me for some coaching, give me a holler on my socials. Otherwise, as always, everything is yet to be done. Everything in the name of Rainer Marie Rilke. What a great quote to lead us out, that everything is yet to be done with your anger too. The good and the bad of it. Work with it, utilize it, have fun with it, don't hate it. It's there for your benefit. All right, folks. Namaste and have a good one and all the things.